I want to say this is like round three of trying to make this video. Um, the first time I tried making this, I had a video component of like me, and then I realized that all the footage was just horribly out of focus, and I was like, God, I suck at this. And I went to film school, so so yeah, I can't even focus a camera on me. So then I kind of scrapped that, although I still have the audio. Maybe I'll use some of it in this, maybe. But this is pretty off the cuff, kind of no real organization to it. I tried writing notes for it, but I got I got kind of bored writing the notes. I'm not gonna lie. Um, so I figured, let me just talk about it then instead in a free form sort of way, and hope this doesn't end up being like an hour long. I've been really into this album. It's called "Isn't It Wonderful" by Sugar Cherry, from an artist known as Rozey, who, if you don't know, he makes really great music and has been dropping music for quite a while now. A lot of it is like not on streaming platforms. You could probably find it on like YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever. Um, you probably know him from his new single that he put out under the name Rozey, "If I Come Home," from earlier this year. It's really great, awesome shoegaze. Yeah, it's just awesome. But he decided to release this project under a different name, Sugar Cherry, and it originally was not supposed to be released to the general public, as he said so in a tweet announcing the release of the album on September 1st. He said it was going to be like, it was a project that he recorded and was, just going to share to his close friends. And then he decided, so graciously and generously, to release it to the wider public for everyone to listen to. So that sort of context, is what I had going into the record, that it was a very personal project for him. And what I was listening to was originally not meant for my ears, or really the general public's ears. And all art is personal to the creator, but I do think that there are different levels of how personal something is. I recently got done watching all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and the final one, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. It's definitely probably a personal film to the director, but I don't think it's the same kind of personal, art form the way that maybe News from Home by Chantal Ackerman is personal to her. Sure, the time and effort that you put into an art project, I think, is what makes it personal to the artist. But it's also the contents of it. You know, News from Home is literally just Chantal Ackerman reading off letters that she received from her mother while she was living in New York in the 70s. It's lonely, it's about love, and, it's very personal to Chantal's own lived experience. Freddy's Dead, on the other hand, is a weird 90s schlocky John Waters-esque fever dream of dumb stuff. But it looks like a lot of, time and effort and passion was put into it, and it is a very personal film, I assume, for the director, for her experience in making it. And honestly, it's a pretty good movie. I like it for what it is. So what does, Belgium art films and Freddy's Dead have to do with Sugar Cherry and the album Isn't It Wonderful? Well, nothing explicitly, but more so the creation and the context of the art being made. The pre-context, of course, being that the record is very personal to the creator, and what we're listening to was not intended for us originally to hear. So then comes into question, why are we listening to it? Why do we choose to listen to this kind of music? And what I mean by this kind of music, I mean sort of music that is labeled as sad or very depressing music. I think of works like Mount Erie's A Crow Looked at Me, Nick Cave and his record Skeleton Tree, various Elliott Smith records, the projects of Sam Rae, under TS, American Pleasure Club, Ricky Eat Acid, Coma Cinema, Car Seat Headrest, Alex G, Mitski, Snail Mail. These kind of like, music that's like sad or labeled as, just very upfrontly sad. And it's this kind of music that people, they listen to a lot of it. And then sometimes you question, why am I listening to such sad and depressing music? I think it's a valid question that, people have wondered about. Like, why do we choose to listen to such sad music? If we're already sad, why do we continue listening to sad music? Shouldn't we be listening to like really happy music instead to make us feel better? But yet it's the sad and depressing music that ends up being the more comforting art form for people. I can really just speak for myself as someone who's been listening to, I guess, sad music for a long time. Back when I was like 7, I was big into Evanescence and Linkin Park, and just the drama and emo-ness of those records really helped me out as a kid, because I felt like I was being understood or whatever, even though I really could never relate to anything that Amy Lee or Chester Bennington were singing about. And then in high school, I got really into, one of the kings of sad guy music, Bright Eyes, Connor Orbist. And the music he made just spoke to extremely depressed teenage me in high school. It got to a point where, there was definitely on some years a sort of unhealthy, level of, I wouldn't say obsession, but I was really, really, really into the music to the point where I probably formed some form of weird parasocial connection to Connor's music, and I thought that I probably knew him better than I actually did, which is to say that I don't know him at all. But I felt like I knew him. And I think this sort of, problem issue, I don't know how big of an issue it actually is, but it does prop up a lot, and especially with younger people, because a piece of art can really help you through tough times in your life, and that's very valid. And many people have that, art that helped them out, whether it be an album or a piece of a film or an art piece, whatever it is. You form an intense emotional connection to this art because it helped you during a very tough time period that you're currently in or that you have been through. But it's this connection that sort of breaks the invisible barrier that's always there between the creator, the artist, the art itself, and the consumer / listener, enjoyer, watcher of said art. We become so attached to the art piece that we end up going and crossing that barrier where our enjoyment and relatability of someone's own personal art sort of crosses into some very strange and messy territories where we're projecting too much of our own lived experience onto someone else's lived experience, even though there might not be any real, crossover or relatability to it. It's a question I have to examine onto myself as well, because I listen and continuously listen to A Crow Looked at Me and like Now Only by Mount Eerie. And those records are extremely, extremely, extremely personable to Phil, because it really is so much about his, lived experience and what happened to him. And obviously I can't relate to any of the emotion, not any of the emotion, I can't relate to the exact feelings and what Phil has gone through because, well, our lives are just so drastically different. But yet, in a strange way, I find those records have helped me out a lot, like back in when they came out. And even still to this day, I listen to them a lot, which is strange to say because, when you say it out loud, it is kind of weird to say, like, yeah, I listened to the record about, the process of your grief after the loss of your wife from cancer. I listened to that record a lot. That's weird to say. That is a strange sentence to be said out loud, because it's like, why why do you listen to that? And that can be applied to many other records, whether it be a Bright Eyes album, you know, or a Conor Oberst solo record where he gets very personal about stuff, an Elliott Smith record. Why are we like, man, this depression is so good on record. It's a 10 out of 10, man. I love it so much. Like, your grief and sadness is amazing. And I know, obviously, it's not, we're not saying that we like that the people are sad or depressed or that they went through this stuff. But we're saying that the art that they created has helped us in a sort of way, because we, on some basic level, have a baseline emotion that we connect with. So this was my mindset going into this record, Isn't It Wonderful, by Sugar Cherry. And I've been listening to this record a lot, like kind of a lot, because it really has struck a chord with me, and I wasn't really expecting it to have sort of impact it's sort of had already on me. Not that I thought it was going to be bad or anything. I like Rozey's music. I like the music that I've heard from him. But yeah, it really has dug its way into my, brain, and I like it a lot. But then I had to contend with the fact that, okay, I really think this record is great, but that feels sort of weird to say because of the context of the record. I question, like, should I have this connection to the art? Like, why? Like, I should I examine further why, we formed this connection, and is it healthy or right to do so? Because obviously you can try to read into, the lyrics of the record. If you want to, you can do that. I personally have not, because I think that's kind of a weird line to like cross when you're just like trying to examine and like find deeper meaning, or like try to explain what every song is about. It's just kind of weird to me. I don't know why it just is a sudden realization to me, but it does feel a bit weird to like, try to examine and pick apart lyrics that are so obviously, personal to a real human being. It just feels a little wrong to do so. And so I really haven't. Like, I've read the lyrics because they're on Bandcamp, which, by the way, if you listen to this record and you really, really like it, I highly suggest supporting it on Bandcamp and buying it. It's at a name your price situation right now, so whatever money you got, and if you like the art, I would strongly suggest that you support the artist, because you should be doing that. Support the art that you like, if you can, of course, because Spotify sure as hell isn't going to pay these artists, so you might as well try to make a more direct contribution to the art that they make. Doing a one over of the lyrics, it's very obvious that the record is dealing with some pretty personal, heavy sort of things that obviously don't know anything about it. Not even gonna inquire. Why would you inquire? I think that's kind of weird to ask what this means. That's also part of my struggle too. Like, obviously this is so personal to the artist, and I don't know, maybe it feels a little icky to me to like say that I like it so much, because I don't know. It just feels like if someone uses art creation as a process to talk about or express or help them out in some way, some things that they're going through that are very hard to talk about, and it's personal to them, and then releasing it to the general public, it's kind of like, oh man, I don't know, it just feels a bit weird. And I know maybe I think maybe I'm overthinking this like a little bit or a lot of it. I don't really know, because it's like, well, if you make art and then you choose to release said art piece, you are then inviting everyone in the entire world to have an opinion on it, to form or not form a connection to the art that you made because you decided to, make it public. And this is something that I've been thinking about and also worrying about a little bit. My art form, I do film. I write. As a screenwriter, filmmaker, right? The screenplay that I'm working on obviously is very personal to me and my lived experience and stuff that I went through and feel. And it is very personal. And then just the idea that came into my head after, listening to this record was like, well, if I'm going to release this film to, the general public, then I guess I am inviting everyone to form an opinion on it, to have a connection to it, to find it relatable by releasing it publicly. I guess I am inviting it. And I guess I know that in some way, that someone can probably watch the movie and be like, well, that movie was kind of bad and the story was kind of terrible. And, I'm feeling like a light 4 on your movie. And you know what? As an artist, I guess you just kind of have to take it, It's like people will just, consume, engage with your art, no matter how personal it is. They'll be like, yeah, your trauma and sadness, it's giving like a light 4 out of 10 for me, Or on the opposite end, it's kind of weird if they say it's like a 10 out of 10 and say, wow, your trauma is so amazing and is so dramatic and makes such a great film. That was great. And it's kind of like, am I like, as an artist, like monetizing my own trauma? And I guess, should I be okay with that? Am I okay with that? I guess I kind of am in a way if I'm, writing it and planning to release it. I'm recommending the record because I think it's great. But at the same time, it's like, putting it in sort of a plain text format. Yes, your lived experience of whatever hardships that you went through is so great. Man, I loved hearing about it on the record. That's weird to say. And maybe it's just because I'm putting it in sort of, very plain terms like that it sounds strange. But I think if you think about more records or albums or movies in this sort of way, you might find that your favorite records are, kind of like that, and you might think twice a little bit about, why you like this record so much. And this isn't really like a review of Isn't It Wonderful, because I don't really like do reviews anyways. Like sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. In a brief way, the record is really good. It sounds great. Well, it sounds very lo-fi. If you're really into like the early works of like TS microphones sort of stuff, where you hear a lot of like noise in the tape recordings of it. I think of like early Horse Jumper of Love, the first album, the demo tapes of Horse Jumper. I get a lot of that same sort of vibes. This is all more like the sonic aesthetics of the record, not really the contents of it. But that kind of stuff, really early Alex G stuff. That's what it sort of sounds like to me. And that's why I like it so much. Just the sonic palette of the record is beautiful, as well as being very chaotic and noisy at times. And I think across the board, Rozey's voice, who if you've heard his music before, it's often like layered in like effects or reverb because he makes a lot of like shoegaze music. But on this record, it's very like raw, very like unfiltered, pretty just kind of bare, and it's great. It fits the sound of the record. At times, his voice is like very like weak and very softly sung, and then there are other moments where it's very intense, and sometimes it's filled with like effects as well, like on the shoegaze rocker Heroin, which is another highlight on the record. I highly recommend that one as well. that's intense. That's some intense stuff. And even Veins is so unsettling to listen to, especially the outro of it is just this cacophony of like noise and screaming vocals and stuff. It's some pretty heavy stuff to listen to, both sonically and lyrically. But I do have to preface it by saying that there is still quite a lot of moments of like really, bright and, beautiful instrumentals and melodies as well. I think across the project, Rozey shows that he has a real, knack for melody. Be it on October Sky, another real highlight on the record, or the very short Sugar at just 45 seconds. One of the songs that I didn't expect to stand out to me so much, but man, this song is beautiful. Lyrics unintelligible. I don't know what he's saying, but it doesn't really matter. It's so beautiful. The guitar, the acoustic guitar melody that he plays, and I think it fits the vibe of the record. It's kind of like a dream that you can't remember. It's like a fragment of a song that you heard in your dreams, and then you wake up, and then you just can't remember how the entire like song went, and you're just kind of stuck with this like fragment of like a melody. That's what I would describe Sugar as. It's one of my favorites on the record. But yeah, see, that's my little mini review of the record. I think it's great. The songs are really solid. Their whole record's like 21 minutes long too, so I do recommend that you listen to it. It doesn't take too much time out of your day. But the bigger point of my, deciding to talk about it really is this sort of barrier between the artist, the art that they make, and the listener / consumer of said art. And then where you find your place along that sort of chain. Are you the artist that has created very personal art that releases it to the public, or are you the listener that is, consuming said art and then forming whatever kind of connection that you do form to it? Have you been in the position where you found that you've really, really, really strongly attached yourself to this piece of art, and on a reflexive note found that maybe it wasn't the healthiest thing to do? Because I know, once again, I have done that to myself in the past, especially with the works of Bright Eyes. I've definitely done that. And I feel like it's really, like a younger person thing, but I can definitely see it happening to anyone at sort of any stage of their lives, but maybe more susceptible to younger people. And I feel like I see that sort of intensity on TikTok. And I can't tell half the time if it's like a joke or if it's being serious or a little bit of both. But, these teenagers or young adults, they really have strong connections to works of art and albums. And it's great because, they find comfort in it. It's helping them, guide them through life or get them through heavy parts of their life, make them realize stuff about themselves. And that's really awesome because that's what great art does. But at the same time, I do worry that they're making the art the be-all and end-all of themselves as a person, which I think is not healthy to do. When you give so much of yourself to an art form or to a piece of art or artist who, once again, you don't know. We don't know them personally. Despite how personal the album is, that the art is, we don't know them. And we will probably never know them on that kind of level. So we should always remember that and keep that in mind. Yes, it may help you, and yes, you can have that connection to it. But also remember the barrier that there will always be. And not to not to like cross that line and get like invasive and weird about the art and the artist, especially online, where you can like tweet, DM people, comment on people's posts like whenever you want. Like, don't be that person. Am I overthinking it? Am I being just like dumb and silly by thinking too much about like listening to music? Maybe I am. Anyways, this is off the cuff. Listen to Isn't It Wonderful by Sugar Cherry. It's a great album. It really is amazing. One of my favorite records that's come out all year, honestly. And if you like it a lot, Once again, support it on Bandcamp. Give it, whatever you can if you're in the position to support the artists in that way. Maybe this whole video is a contradiction by me recommending the art at the end of the day. I don't know. Please tell me. Tell me. Maybe I should just stop talking. I don't know. Thank you. Join me next time where I talk about something else. Music related? Maybe. Anyways, thanks.